I'm here at the build site where the largest EV battery manufacturing plant in the world is being built. But something's not being talked about. They've said it'll bring over 3,000 jobs to the small city of St. Thomas that has the population of just over 40,000 people. It's forecasted to be worth over $200 billion to the Canadian economy. The federal and provincial governments are pumping over $14 billion in direct subsidies into this project. The city of St. Thomas has already taken on over $80 million of debt. It's almost finished a $23 million widening of an intercity commuter road. New water and sewer lines are going in. The provincial electric company is routing new power lines to the site. The money is flowing. All this activity has the air filled with excitement. Isn't this exactly what every town dreams of happening to them? I mean, what could go wrong?
I don't think you'll find anyone who can talk openly.
Okay, for the mayor,
yes,
meeting with him,
who just will feel safe to talk openly about the financial side of this project, probably at any level of government.
A prosperous place is not a place that's burdened with debts of future generations.
Welcome to St. Thomas.
We're a straight line between Chicago and New York City. Comes right through St. Thomas, which then connects Detroit and Niagara Falls. So it really was the right place to put railways, right? Certainly freight was traveled and passenger traffic traveled through it.
St. Thomas had 26 railways running through it in the past and was known as the Railway City. Then, for a time, it was known as a car assembly city. But can it be a future-focused, resilient city? Well, it's complicated. Let me explain. Many towns and cities like St. Thomas have gone through rapid top-down expansions like this before. For example, Gary, Indiana was once a thriving city with the largest steel mill complex in North America. But when the steel industry tanked in the 70s, local manufacturing jobs disappeared, and Gary saw a 61% decline in its population. Gary serves as a warning example of what can happen when a city relies too heavily on just one sector of its economy. A similar thing happened a few years ago in Mount Pleasant, Wisconsin. In 2017, officials announced that Foxconn was going to build a new high-tech manufacturing facility there to make LCD screens. When finished, it was expected to be one of the largest manufacturing campuses in the world. You can probably guess that's not what ended up happening. Billions of taxpayer dollars later, Mount Pleasant is saddled with massive debt that's proving very hard to recover from. It's not looking good. But what does this mean for St. Thomas? Is it doomed to suffer the same fate as Gary and Mount Pleasant? Let's go deeper to find out exactly what is happening here, and what they could lose if it all went wrong. St. Thomas is not unlike small towns and cities everywhere that share a reasonable desire to lure large businesses like the Volkswagen plant that promises to bring an influx of new jobs, economic growth, and prosperity, all in one go. It's easy to see why the city was so eager to take advantage of the $14 billion in subsidies provided by the federal and provincial governments. City Council figured that an opportunity like this might only come around once in a generation.
There are a couple cities around the world I probably can't visit right now because we stole this great opportunity from them.
St. Thomas beat out at least 90 locations around the globe and 40 in North America to land the Volkswagen investment.
What a great opportunity, generational opportunity for St. Thomas.
And that generational opportunity is why St. Thomas is willing to incur extra short-term expenses now for additional tax revenue in the future. So, what are some of those short-term expenses? Well, besides the $80 million for the acquisition of the 1,500-acre parcel of land needed for the battery plant, there was the $23 million expansion of Highbury Avenue from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, extending it, and adding 3 new roundabouts.
This road widening project was the largest that the city has ever undertaken. It involved property acquisition, 5 different parcels. Utilities had to be moved out of the way. Hydro One, Rogers, Bell, Union Gas, gas. We had a rail crossing as well that we had to install new signal flashers. Really, this project touched almost everything you can in terms of infrastructure. Now, that was just Highbury.
Leveling the entire industrial site in preparation for the new battery plant and upgrading the city's water and wastewater capacity 7 years earlier than planned. So, the city of St. Thomas faces a big challenge of needing to build all of this infrastructure now, but it won't be seeing any new tax revenues from the battery plant and other associated activity for about another 5 years or so.
For those additional revenue streams to kick in, how many years are you expecting?
Well, we know that the industrial side of things doesn't happen until they start producing product, right? And even then, it will ramp. In our case, municipally, it'll ramp fairly quickly over the years. You know, as I said, it's expensive over this year and the next couple of years, but we think we'll be okay.
So I think that there would be some people that would suggest that the debt levels that we will likely end up incurring would be uncomfortable in their mind. But then I think there's a lot of other people that would look at it and say, like, you know, based on what the likely outcome of this is in terms of tax revenue, not just directly from industry, but all of the growth that the community is going to see, it's the investment of the lifetime.
Taking on such massive infrastructure projects does come with risks. When it all works out, it's wonderful. But whenever a main industry leaves town, the effect on the local economy is devastating. St. Thomas should know. It's been through boom and bust cycles before.
Those are like the ebbs and flows and the almost boom and busts, but not quite, because...
Oh, no, it could be called that, I think. We've seen some pretty deep recessionary times in St. Thomas. When Ford decided to close their production facility just outside of St. Thomas, Freightliner, a truck manufacturer here in town, it was a dreary moment. And you mentioned the railway. It used to employ 80% of everybody in town were railway employees or were here because there was railways here. It was a huge industry for St. Thomas in the early 19th century. 19th century, 20th century.
However that works. Yeah,
right.
It's always
whatever one it is.
So what's different this time? You know when I mentioned earlier how because of St. Thomas's great location, it was previously known as a railway town and then a car assembly town, and then I asked if it could be a future-focused, resilient town? Well, the secret is that it has historically been a future-focused, resilient town. That's because in previous boom-bust cycles, the city was never required to take on massive amounts of debt to dramatically expand infrastructure in order to lure large businesses into town. But now, our way of growth has changed, and it's common practice for cities to rely on a single manufacturer for economic growth.
So we gathered a very large piece of industrial property, to us a very large piece of industrial property, and said, okay, that will satisfy that. They will come. Well, it was an industry that came, truly. It was the province of Ontario said, hey, Joe, we see what you're doing. Can we play? Can we help? We've got some very large industries looking to build what they're calling giga plants in the world. And we'd like to go in and go after them and have them end up in Ontario. We said, well, yes, let's work together. I used an election slogan in the last election that was, yes is the answer. Now, what's the question? And so the Premier and I laugh about that a lot, but at the time it was, yes, let's go forward and see if we can gather. We didn't know who it was. We didn't know any of these, and we were under non-disclosure agreements as we started to negotiate, so we really couldn't ask many questions other than answer their questions about checking the boxes. Yes, we have land. Yes, we have water. Yes, we have the ability to transport. We have power, those types of things. And it really wasn't till, I don't know, about 3 months before the announcement, we even knew it was Volkswagen Power Co.
From the need to increase wastewater capacity for the town of 43,000, which is presently fine for until about 7 years from now, and annexing the land for over $80 million specifically for the battery Gigafactory, to doubling the lanes of Highbury Road, which is a main commuter road that connects the nearby city of London, Ontario to St. Thomas, the city of St. Thomas faces the big challenge of needing to build all of this infrastructure now. But it won't be seeing any new tax revenues from the battery plant and associated activities for another 5 years. That means taking on massive amounts of municipal debt. All in all, the city is preparing on expanding all of these services ahead of time because of the forecasted massive and acute population growth that's projected because of this one massive employer that is coming to town. And while this whole last section might have felt a little bit harsh, I want to reinforce that it's actually not the fault of city officials. All cities in North America are following this development pattern and have been for quite some time now. It's not out of bad intent. We're just all following a bad development pattern in the first place. In just a bit, we'll dig deeper into how we're definitely not against investments for the future at all, but how important it is for successful municipalities to grow gradually as a city expands naturally and incrementally. But something that is not part of expanding naturally and incrementally is highways. Before we move on to the next section, I need to point out a difference between the United States and Canada and the way that highways are built and maintained, because St. Thomas is on the hook for everything I mentioned just now, but because of the way that Canada funds its highways, it actually does avoid a future maintenance debt nightmare brought on by the highway. See, one of the proposed infrastructure upgrades is a 9.4, nearly 6-mile, 2-lane to 4-lane highway widening project on the north end of the city. That's separate from the other widening that is a municipal road.
Major road changes are coming to the region thanks to the addition of the Volkswagen EV battery plant in St. Thomas.
But in Ontario, the initial build cost as well as the ongoing maintenance cost is actually covered by the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario, aka the MTO, at the provincial level. This differs from the United States, where a state typically pays the initial cost of highway builds, but then the municipalities are left with the burden of maintenance of those highways forever after, which can be very not good. But no matter which country highways are built in, they are, without a doubt, the most expensive type of road to maintain due to their width, high traffic volumes, and high traffic speeds. As of about a decade ago, the average annual cost to maintain just 1 mile of the U.S. national highway system was just around $28,000. Again, that's just for one single mile, and at the end of the day, no two roads cost the same to maintain. And that was like a decade ago. Inflation exists, so you can bet it's way higher now. Not only that, highways typically only have a lifespan of around 15 to 25 years. So, although here in Ontario, the MTO takes the burden of capital and maintenance costs off of the individual cities that they build highways through or near, they don't alleviate the numerous other problems of needlessly widening highways, but that's a whole other video. And there are already plenty of videos covering highways, like this one on screen right now from Strong Towns. Link in the description. Put briefly, the municipality of St. Thomas is nowhere near being off the hook for incurring massive costs. To many people hearing this probably seems like a natural growth project and of negligible concern, because it's all too common. But because this is all too common, we're actually seeing towns across North America struggling financially now more than ever, and it will only get worse as time goes on, unless these places start doing something different going forward. And this is where financial transparency is just so important for the public.
At Strong Towns, we have a phrase that we'll say all the time, do the math, right? And when a company or an investment comes to town, they've done their math, but have you done your math? Because that's an important piece, right? Hopefully the math is the same, but probably sometimes the math is not always the same. Sometimes math is used to make a case. And so it's really important that when these opportunities for major investment come through, your leaders are really making decisions, whether they even realize it in the moment or not, about how your future dollars will be spent.
For sure. And when they turn to the residents, that just means property tax increases, correct? Or
it can mean some not pleasant things. It can mean some fees, and it can mean some things that are tough for people.
St. Thomas has managed to hold its property tax increases to just under 3% by, according to the mayor of St. Thomas, using a little bit of reserve funds and a little bit of moving things around.
Everybody's in a bit of a tight piece right now, because of inflation more than anything else, the cost of doing things, even municipal road paving, has gotten an extreme inflationary piece to it. So we're looking at being able to keep well at inflation or less in our next budget. We feel comfortable. St. Thomas will continue to do that.
So, communicating finances to the public in a transparent, easy to understand way is key. But once you start involving so many layers of government and private business deals, it gets complicated very, very fast. So complicated that even the top dogs at the municipal level are not privy to the details of the goings-on the land and with the resources that they're overseeing on behalf of the taxpayers in the first place.
But I just wanted to know how much St. Thomas was, I guess, responsible for.
You're not alone wanting to know that. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to be the bearer of bad news and tell you that it's going to be really difficult for you to get any good information on that because of the layers of different deals and different NDAs that are involved in this. I don't think you'll find anyone who can talk openly, who just will feel safe to talk openly about the financial side of this project, probably at any level of government.
Can you explain a little bit more about the funding from the federal, provincial, and municipal governments and how that works?
I can't get extremely detailed. There was probably 3 or 4 levels of negotiations that happened to attract PowerCo to this community. One was at the federal and international level. And trust me, the mayor didn't get to sit in on those. We knew they were happening. We knew that the growth like this would need the help of all levels of government. And we were pleased to say, let's play. We're happy to be there. But some of those negotiations, certainly at the federal and provincial level, were done without us. The provincial and municipal levels we're well aware of, but very much controlled so by non-disclosures as we're doing them, of course. And then the negotiations with Volkswagen and PowerCo themselves were only partially us because each of the other levels of government were also doing negotiations with them. A lot has become a lot clearer and more public now, and so we know what has happened, but we weren't pushing the issue other than, yes, we want it here, and yes, this is the right thing for us all to work on.
So how does a community such as St. Thomas balance the lure of rapid expansion with more traditional incremental growth? To answer that, we need to introduce a concept coined by Strongtowns called the growth Ponzi scheme.
Human history throughout the course of time, communities have and cities have largely grown incrementally.
Then the church and the mill. These were gradually connected by footpaths and horse trails. As the settlement grew into a village, paths became roads for wagons and carriages.
After World War II, we really saw kind of a complete shift in how our communities developed. And really, a lot of that was based on how our community's growth was financed. When we say growth Ponzi scheme, people are familiar with Ponzi schemes in finance, right? So the steps that you're taking today or the things that you're selling today are going to be paid for by the next people that you sell them to. And in communities, it's not a lot different.
In contrast to the growth Ponzi scheme, the traditional development pattern refers to the approach to growth and development that humans have used for thousands of years across different cultures, continents, and latitudes. For example, in St. Thomas, as in most modern cities, there is a denser grid pattern in the older part of the city, whereas the newer parts are more spread out. Pre-automobile cities, big and small, in countless societies, were built at a human scale, where a person on foot could feel comfortable and safe. In these places, most of a person's day-to-day needs are accessible by walking. The traditional development pattern allows for a city to grow from the bottom up, chaotic, but smart. It allows for more incremental and adaptable growth, not to mention financial transparency because everything's at a smaller scale. Anyway.
At Strongtowns, we want communities to grow in a way that they can keep growing and keep thriving and be productive places and not take on debt for future generations.
I think if someone was to resist it and we were to underinvest now, 10 years from now, we'd be kicking ourselves. You know, it's so rare that a city our size has an opportunity to really almost like leapfrog a whole phase of its development and grow as quickly as we're going to have the opportunity to. Debt financing is absolutely going to be a part of how we do that, but it's going to put us on really sure footing in the future.
So what does true prosperous growth look like? According to Strong Towns, prosperous growth looks like small bets, tactical urbanism, and investing in what we already have, like our downtowns, which often already have good bones with human-scale grid patterns, versus spending money that we don't have on stuff that we don't currently need, almost like a household budget. In contrast to taking small bets that allow a town to remain resilient, we just don't know yet how St. Thomas's big bet with the VW battery plant will turn out. Will it suffer the same fate as Gary and Mount Pleasant? We don't know.
There are local concerns about tariff impacts, especially when it comes to the future of the Volkswagen battery plant.
Macroeconomic trends and international events are unpredictable and can drastically affect things at the local level. And the massive VW plant is not immune from these forces.
Since they haven't poured concrete yet in St. Thomas, I would not be surprised, given the current dire situation Volkswagen is also facing in Germany, that they may reconsider the investment in that plant.
Volkswagen's not made decisions about billions upon billions of dollars of investments in Canada and the United States and Mexico.
Officials with the St. Thomas EV battery plant say overseas problems for Volkswagen won't affect the development here.
But if we've learned anything about St. Thomas, it was a resilient city in the past, and it should be a resilient city in the future, depending on numerous factors. But it also might not be. Either way, we're rooting for you, St. Thomas. I'm hoping your city, and others faced with similar predicaments around the world, will be able to balance the challenges of rapid expansions with the more traditional growth pattern. And the first step in doing that is to have your eyes opened to the need for that balance. If you've made it this far into the video, then you're really interested in making a difference. And one of the best ways you can do that is by connecting with others who also want to make a difference, by signing up to be a Strong Towns member. Links and stuff in the description. Oh, and as a member, you'll gain access to extra content, like the long-form interviews that were cut up for this video. That's over 2 hours of extra footage that, to be honest, when combined with Strong Towns knowledge, is really fascinating to listen to. By the way, it's about time for a formal introduction. I'm Ben Durham, a video producer based in London, Canada. Yes, that London. And as you might have noticed across Strong Towns content channels, Strong Towns has been opening up their platform to outside creators so that more ideas can be shared from across the world. This video in particular was filmed as a collaborative production with members of the Strong Towns team and me, Ben Durham. So make sure you do all of the stuff, like, subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And check out my channel. Why not? Bye!